No problem. And thank you for coming back on this podcast. This is the Digital Novelist Podcast. My name is Keith Hayden. And I have got for the second time, this time in full audio, not just me mouth breathing over the microphone like it was last time, as I desperately tried everything that I knew to save the interview, but I was unsuccessful. But I've got Tony and Ada with me. Thank you so much. It's so great to see both of you. In the month that we've been apart, how have you guys been?
It's been a month.
It's been a month. It's been quite the long month.
Yeah.
But good. February was what happened in February? We got
We
to see
were
our
both
folks.
sick for a while.
We were both sick, which was
Yeah.
not fun. Got to see the folks, which was nice.
Cool.
Parents actually just left town, which was good.
Nice.
Had a little time to ourselves.
Cool.
That was nice. What about you?
So much as I feel like just this week alone, it's been one of those weeks where I've lived like a whole month in a week. There's been a ton going on. But yeah, I've just published another book, my first book, in fact, for somebody else. And I just got the proof copy just yesterday. It's a huge accomplishment. Thank you very much. Just really excited
Congratulations.
to be. Thank you. First novel, first of many, hopefully, and just glad to be helping other people out to tell their stories. But so this is for our audience listening. This is my second time talking to Tony and Ada because the first time I was such a bonehead and decided not to turn on the sound on their end. So, but I met them back in December at a Dime Grinds event, the first Dime Grinds event that we had in person in several years, in fact, in town. And I was so lucky to get to witness Tony and Ada's just amazing writing skills in person and just their delivery. And one of the things that I remember we talked about is how you guys are such a great team. If you wouldn't mind just, I promise you're not going to have to say the exact same things that you said to me the first time, but just for mainly the audience, like,
Because I don't remember.
how did you two kind of get together? How did you start writing together? Because when I think of one of the things I commented on is you guys have just a beautiful connection. And I can tell with your writing, the way you just look on camera, it is just, it's couple goals to the max. And I I love seeing it. But yeah, how did you guys kind of get together and how did you start this kind of wonderful partnership that you have?
How did we get together? We met in Philadelphia in 2008, or maybe a little bit before that, according to some people, but we don't remember it, so it didn't happen.
Yeah.
We're both born and raised in Michigan. We both Ada grew up in Kalamazoo, and I went to Kalamazoo College, so we crossed paths without knowing it before we met in Philadelphia after I had left K, and while Ada was
Interning.
interning in Philadelphia throughout her undergrad. So, but then we hit it off.
Immediately.
We kind of stuck together since then, and I had always been the more kind of analytical, business-minded individual, and Ada brings that creative flair, that artistic flavor that my life had been missing.
Awesome.
So that was
That's
part
so
of that.
kind.
It was part of that opposites attract piece, but that's also, I think, what makes our partnership strong in both our life as well as being the bit of time that we are creative partners together. She's definitely the creative in the house. I just draft off that energy.
I feel like that's a nice way to say flaky, but I'll take it.
No! Get myself in trouble.
No,
I know,
thank
right?
you. That was really cool. I agree.
Awesome. Yeah, you're going to have to listen to this back again, listen to it and just be like, remember when you said that? Remember you said I was kind of flaky? Yeah.
No, I really appreciate how you put that, Tony, because I feel similarly like you. The opposites attract piece really does hold it together because in the ways that I might be a little bit less strong, you really come in with that. And I think that, at least for me, I feel makes it easier to be that more creative, like risk taking to have that stability.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for asking that question.
No problem. And I can just see it. I mean, I just feel this kind of palpable. And I do think of you two as a unit. I think of you two like more than most people. And I remember you told me the first time how it's important that you're both individual people in your relationship. And that's kind of the success of your relationship. And that's how you make it stronger and keep it there, is that you don't eclipse each other. It's a complementary relationship. Yeah, and it's wonderful to see. I have a similar thing with my wife where I'm more of the big picture, the visionary, the dreamer type of person, and she's like the nitnoid, brass tacks. You didn't put a period down here. You didn't put a comma there. That's who's the period and comma person over there? Which one of you?
Me.
Yeah,
Me for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I am lucky to get to be one of the first readers for a lot of Ada's work.
Yeah.
And I always have to catch myself by going too far into the details the first time. Sometimes I just need to make sure to let my partner get out those dreams.
Yes.
Give her a few pointers, and then come back when she's really ready for that deep Tony Holt editor.
You need to say that to my wife. I wish you would do that instead of just coming in like, "Oh man, that's a rough looking picture." It's a sketch, baby. Like, brother can't sketch over here. No learning. Got to be perfect the first time. Do you feel me?
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. I think we both do.
I think you know a little bit what I'm talking about. It's rough, man. Ain't no learning in here. Got to get it right the first time. No, it's great. And Tony, I'll tell you something. I mentioned, so my wife and I were staying in a hotel a couple of weeks back, and we were watching this old, like, those old crime shows where it's like, they're from the early 2000s, and they're like, this is the crime, and we're going to show you. There was a crime that actually took place in Kalamazoo. And my wife was like, where's Kalamazoo? Is that in Canada? I said, actually, I know where that is. Michigan. And she was like, oh. Saw the snow on the ground.
Home of Kalamazoo College. Home of Kalamazoo College. Home of Western Michigan University.
Go Broncos.
Home of, I believe it was Derek Jeter's alma mater, Kalamazoo. Yeah.
Wow.
The original home place of the kazoo.
Of
course.
Really?
Kalamazoo. And there was one more thing.
Was it related to Pfizer?
Headquarters of Pfizer Medical.
Wow.
This is probably cooler than that. And it was a big punk rock scene in the punk rock and slam poetry in the late 90s through maybe 2006-ish.
That's where you cut your teeth, right? How you got into writing and poetry first, yeah.
Really? Oh, yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
Me and some friends around to bars and coffee shops in Kalamazoo for slams.
Wow. So how did that, we didn't talk about that last time. So how did you get into that scene? And then you said from the 90s to 2006, it's a very specific year. So what happened around that time to where it kind of either dwindled or faded, or I'm just kind of curious. It's pretty cool.
I'm not sure. I know in 2007 I went to K College and just kind of fell out of it. But I got into slam poetry in high school to stay out of trouble. And because I was good at it. I wasn't good at sports or anything like that. And we didn't have a lot of options at the small public high school that I went to. But then I found that, and it was awesome. And slam poetry led me to get an acting scholarship to K College, which got me to K College,
cool.
Where I met Tony Holt.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so that got you in there, and slam poetry was kind of your... Wait, so when you say slam poetry, can you kind of... Because I have a picture in my mind of what you're talking about, but can you just kind of describe...
Def Jam Poetry Festival, the National Poetry Slam. Like if you think of those DVDs or that like that's what I'm talking about, where you get 3 minutes on stage and you have
Yeah.
to just you and the mic, no props, no music. Um, Kind of ruthless competition, but also just
Yeah.
ridiculous good fun.
Wow. So I've always wondered, do you prep for that, or is it more of just like a feeling and you just kind of let it out, or how does it? Is it more of like freestyle rap, or is it more like I'm gonna write my lines down first and then I'm gonna go up and spit?
That's a great question, and I've never asked you that question
Really?
myself. Yeah, I've always wanted to know.
For me personally, I am not. I could maybe improvise with a team, but I'm not good at making it up on the spot. So
Mm,
I write at least an outline and memorize beforehand.
okay.
I got to the point where I could write an outline. I could have like the four pillars of the poem, and then I could get up and know that I had the 10 seconds for the seconds for each of them, and I could fill it in.
Yeah.
Um, but no,
Kind of like freestyling from a base, if you
Right.
will.
that's generous.
No, I like that. I'm the exact same way. And in fact, that's how I do my speeches. I'm a big outline
Oh,
person because I used to do a lot of
Yes.
Toastmasters. So once I get an outline and know like, okay, I'm going to cover at least these 3 points, and then I can just kind of fill in the blanks with whatever else.
Hmm.
Because I
very
find if
nice,
I
very
like
nice.
try and memorize everything, I psych myself out and make myself more nervous because I'm like, oh, I'm not sticking to my
Mhm,
own lines when it's my lines. Nobody else obviously knows
mhm,
what I should
mhm.
be saying or what I thought I was going to say. So I kind of just quit doing that and I'm like, okay, I'll just kind of give myself some note cards and then I'll just go from there.
Oh,
It's such a delicate dance of like the point where you memorize it, where and then being comfortable throwing it away or deviating from the script
Exactly.
versus kind of being like, oh, I gotta stick to this.
Yeah, and I find it, I don't know, maybe you find it, I don't know how you see it, but I find that if I'm too rigid on the script, then it loses some like fire. It loses some authenticity. Whereas if I feel like I can go off script a little bit, okay, then now I can just be more myself and it comes out more natural and we all have a better time than if I'm sitting there and this and, that way.
no, I definitely would agree with that. In the I'm no Toastmaster myself, but in the few public speaking opportunities I have, I can really see the difference between, like you said, having an outline, knowing the general direction versus
Right,
trying to stick to a script. It makes it a lot, it makes it robotic. It makes it less organic. It makes it harder to
right.
connect with the audience in the moment, and feed off that energy, feed off that fire.
Yeah, but I feel like with you, Tony, I mean, when I saw you at that Dime Grinds, I was like, man, you were captivating. Like the way you read that part, I forget what it was, but it was that lady's story, and you just went up there and ran with
Woo!
it. And I was like, how many times has he? Wasn't that not amazing? I was like, how many times has he
It was
seen
amazing.
this?
That was the best cold read I have ever
It was
seen. And like
insane.
this man co-founded a theater company and was in an improv troupe for a while
Ah,
too.
I
So
did.
okay,
don't let
I
him
did.
fool
I did do that. I did do that.
okay,
Um, no, that was a great time. That was a great time in Vegas with that cold
you.
read.
Hmm.
A gentleman handed me his phone. There was an author who couldn't be there, and she had written a what was
Pepsi night before
it
Christmas.
was a
yeah,
sexy night before
that's right,
Christmas, and as
man.
soon as I started reading it, I got like two or three lines in, and I could see where it was going. I'm like,
Yeah.
I just I couldn't not play this up. Like, why not? Why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. And you
Um,
had us, man. You had us
yeah.
laughing. You had us smiling. Like the windows was fogging up in that bubble tea place. I was like, what's going on here?
It's true.
It's 4 p.m.
There were parents hustling their kids out the
I
door to
know
watch
they
the tea
covered
drop.
their ears.
You're killing me. You're
I
killing
was
me.
like, yo,
Thank
Tony, man. It was so good. And
thank
that
you.
and that gets me to, how I kind of found you guys' writing is what you were talking about there and representing your roles in Comics Lit. And I see you're wearing the shirt, Tony, and this is Comics Lit. Yep, here it is. You knew we were going to talk about it. And it's kind of good that that first recording went the way it went because there was so much in you guys' essays, respectively, that you just can't do it justice. They each could have their own. We could do an episode on each one of your essays. And Ada, if you just want to talk about,
Glad to come back.
yeah, hey, we may have to have you on a third time to talk about it. By then, you probably would have written something else. But Ada, you talked about so many good things in yours. Yours was a kind of deep dive on Saga, and you were teaching a comic book through adult literacy program to college age students. Do you mind just kind of describing how that came about and what that process is like for you and why you decided to choose a comic book of all things?
Sure. I my grandmother was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse, and I feel like it's something I'm good at. It's something I've always loved. And I don't know, it was about 5, 6 years ago. I was teaching at a high school, and I came home one day and I told Tony that I hate working in K through 12, but I love teaching, so I need to go back to school and get a master's degree
Yeah.
so I could teach adults. And then on like my first day, I hadn't even enrolled at this Naropa University yet, and I'm on campus like previewing the thing to see if I want to go to their low res program. And I meet this guy, Tony Farina, in the quad, and I just start like asking questions, and we hit it off talking about literature. And it turns out he is hiring for adjunct professors at this university in Michigan to teach online. So I started working there almost immediately, as
Cool.
soon as I could. And the program or the class that I was teaching Saga in was a liberal arts studies course. Everyone has to take a certain amount of them at this university, humanities courses. And I chose a comic book. I chose Saga because my students ranged from 17, 18, just out of high school, to 70 plus,
Wow.
retired and going back to school to
Yeah.
try to do something else, or because they want to get that degree. So I've got undergrads ranging from 18 to, a second, third career, busy working people. They've all got other classes, other books to read. And in my first class teaching, I think about a third of the students, English was not their first language, and for a couple of them, it wasn't even their second.
Wow.
So I thought, how can we, maximize all of the media and all of the senses to make this experience where we have to be online most of the time as
Yeah.
interactive and multisensory as possible.
Cool.
And then I landed on Saga specifically just because of all of the world building, and it just offers such a rich connection to so many classic stories from Shakespeare all the way back to Ovid. So it also gives us a vehicle to kind of like dig into some of those classics that might seem intimidating to people who haven't encountered them before
Yeah.
or don't know that they've encountered them.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really amazing too. And I think that's one of the things we talked about last time is that the medium of comic books, the presentation style, you've got the visuals and of course you've got the words on the page as well, but a lot of it is just the composition and the connection between both of these that gives you a different way to experience literature. And that was a big part of the whole comics lit why it exists, right? Comic books are high art. This is something that this is kind of the theme behind it, and Saga, it makes sense from that perspective. Ada, you had so many good quotes in yours that I underlined. I'm just going to read two that I really liked. Actually, I'll read three because I see them. Discomfort is a part of life. Discomfort is part of life. I love that one. Desire drives creation. I love that line as well. Anyone who thinks one book has all the answers hasn't read enough books. That's the line I wanted to ask you about. What made you put that in there? Because I was just like, tell them. What does that mean to you, and why
That
did you
is
include that?
Well, what I included it because it's my favorite quote. It's my favorite scene in the entire series so far.
Mm.
Um, Hazel and her grandmother in prison, and her school teacher in prison. Um, is I don't know what they're talking about, but at some point Hazel's like quoting the gospel of this like romance novel that her parents met and bonded over. And she's only read this one book and she's like, it's it's just everything. And her teacher turns around and like there's this stern picture of this teacher who does not look stern at all, but like is really trying. And she's like, if you've only read one book or if you think one book has all the answers, you haven't read enough. And it's just like
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Mm.
And it's unforgettable and it's my favorite quote in the book. But what it means to me is just that. Um, if you think the Bible has all your answers and it's the only book you need to read, you're wrong.
And I thought you were going there. That's
Um,
immediately what I thought of. Like, because in the past, and I've seen this take here these days now too, that it's not if it's not the Bible, it's you could kind of extrapolate to one book, one movie. There's people who just this is it. This is the only thing that forms my worldview, and that's why I landed on that quote. We kind of see eye to eye on that because you need to gather perspectives. There's a lot of perspectives in this world, and a book is just one person's interpretation. It could be of many perspectives, just like Saga is, but it's still one person's lens or a team of a group of people's lens. It cannot be representative of everything that there is. I think that's why I was like, yeah, I feel you. That's exactly. I love it.
it's good stuff.
Uh, wh- oh, there was. I was like, what is that? What is that tail? Oh, okay, okay. Then I was like, okay, it's a cat.
Sorry.
Everything's okay. One of the things we talked about last time, and then we'll talk, and then I want to talk to you, Tony, a little bit about your essay. Um, why we're more averse to depictions of sex and sexuality than depictions of violence and death. You mentioned this, and I wrote, I think about this all the time. Um, if you wouldn't mind just kind of giving me and giving our audience, like why did you include that in there, and how do you see that, and why do you think that is the case?
First of all, I'm so excited to hear that you also think about that all the time
I do.
because every time it comes up when we're watching something on TV or um just so many moments that are just absolutely quotidian and like basic. It just there's war language for medicine, there's war language for cooking, there's war language for business. But we get so sensitive if we see, two men kissing
Mm.
at all, period, for any
Mm.
amount of time,
Yeah.
or like heteros kissing for like
Yep.
more than a good 10 seconds on
Mm-hmm.
screen. I don't know what we were watching the other night. It was so good. Miami Vice.
Yeah.
We're watching Miami Vice. It's from the 80s.
Yeah.
And there's this like beautiful scene where Tubbs and this woman are just in bed like making out. And it's like a 3-minute scene. I'm like, they know how to do that in the 80s. But now we get like, 15 minutes of the Star Jets just like dropping bombs on planets.
Yeah.
And then you get this little like drive-by smooch. Why is that? Sorry, I'm on a soapbox.
No, go ahead.
So I did that and I went off on that because I think it's worth drawing attention to, and I think it's worth contemplating.
Yeah. What do you think happened between the 80s? Because I think you're right. Like, I feel like sex and seeing breasts and just seeing just more like expression of the human figure, and not just for women, men too, in the past was actually more accepted and maybe a little bit even more prevalent in the past. But now you're right about that. You're right. Even the language has transitioned to more of a it's got to be I like what you said, war language. That's I haven't heard that before. But you're right. You're right. What do you think happened between now and then in the last 40 years?
Ooh.
Wow.
Well, I've only been alive for like 36 of them, so
I mean, I mean, we've been through, at least in this country, we've been through multiple wars,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Since the 80s, you
That's
know?
Taking
true.
a puritanical turn, I think, in terms of our political governance,
For
there's
sure.
been some religious curbing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's like the more it's like the old phrase, violence begets violence,
Mm.
right? The more we leaned into the war and the fighting and the aggression and the machismo
Yeah.
to a
Mm-hmm.
certain point, the more we saw it. Maybe I should say the less we saw it, right? The
Right.
more
The more
desensitized we became, the more we expected it.
Right.
Heck, the more we asked for it,
For
right?
sure.
gains momentum.
Yeah.
We are what we think, what we say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, and you can just take small things. I guess it's not even a small thing, like school shootings. I remember Columbine, and it was a huge deal. It was like a
Yeah.
nation
Mm-hmm.
stopping, freezing. Like I was in high school at that time,
Shut
and
down.
yeah, everything was shut down, and it was like, whoa, what is this? And now
Yeah.
it's barely a blip on the radar. If there's a school shooting,
Mm-hmm.
it
Just another day.
yeah, they don't even make headlines anymore. It is troubling that you're right that we have become so desensitized through media with with just acts of aggression and, as you said, war language, right? And I'm sitting here, a military veteran, and I've been trained in these types of, to conduct military operations, that type of thing. But that's military. I mean, I look out in the civilian landscape and I'm like, whoa, this is kind of disturbing. These are not soldiers. These are not airmen.
Mm.
These are school teachers. Like a lot of the skills that I became a school teacher after I got out of the military, and I'm like, why do I still need military skills in the classroom? Like, I'm glad I have them, but I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
That is a wild expectation when you stop and think about it. But here in America, it is very normalized. I mean, it's a lot of the reason why a lot of teachers have left the profession, because they're like, I can barely teach, let alone defend myself and defend 30 kids against some type of act of aggression. Like it,
And or each other. And
right,
or
or
themselves.
That's true.
themselves. And
Or
it's really hard to think about. I can barely get through a lesson without getting interrupted, let alone like stop a shooter or something like that. But that's part of the expectation now, and it's pretty insane. But I don't want it to be all
Well,
doom
you
and
saw a
gloom.
saint.
Oh, thank you.
Well, you are a saint for being a you're doing the work that many of us can't. I
Yeah,
thank you for
man.
it.
And I'm getting ready to step back in the classroom too. Probably soon, within this month. I'm gonna get on with a job here.
right.
Hopefully within the next few weeks. So yeah, I'm gonna be back in some of our nation's lowest ranked schools here, and
Oh,
it is what it is, though.
sounds like they, it
They
sounds like
need
they
you.
need you. It sounds like they need you, Keith. I can't think of a better person to be there.
Oh, you're too kind, man. A lot of it these days now, I'm just like it's example. Like that's what I try and be. Like I just when people see you doing stuff actively, trying, even stuff like this podcast, it's like it's so minor, but for me, it's a big deal to be able to have you two on here and to be able to talk to you, especially given the circumstances, the way the first one went. That leads me to want to talk to you, Tony, about your essay, and we got into some discussion, if you will, last time I was on, because it was black, just a little bit. We started talking. Yours is Invisible Kings, Black Identity, and Black in America, and you also had some power lines, and I'm just going to read you the exact question, my exact notes, because I don't think I read this last time.
Okay.
You talked about Black Panther, the relationship between Black Panther and the Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison. I said both unnamed narrator from The Invisible Man and BP, Black Panther, are not surprised to hear about their betrayal. Why do you think that is? Why do we expect niggas to betray us? This is exactly what I wrote as I was reading your essay.
And I remember exactly what I said on the on the first podcast. I quoted a Jay-Z song. If you put crabs in a barrel to ensure your survival, you're gonna end up pulling down niggas that look just like you.
Yeah.
I I'm no historian. I'm no educator, right? I'm not particularly well read. I'm more
That's a
read than
lie.
okay.
That's a cram.
That's I'm
You're
quite
so
well read.
humble.
I will say I'm quite well read. I will say, um, but I think that that idea of um, that thought, that feeling where it's a zero sum game,
Right.
where the only way I can succeed is if I pull you down and take your spot, and then
Right.
take the next spot and the next spot.
Right.
That I think that is a that's a thought process that's been instilled, I think, in many people in this country. I think it's in instilled in America a little bit, and
Yeah.
even more so in Black America
Yeah.
from what what we have been through the trade, through slavery throughout America,
Yeah.
through the creation of Jim Crow laws
Yep.
and books like how to make a slave, right? That
Mm-hmm.
were actual instruction manuals that were
Oh yeah.
teaching you how to turn a people against each other, right?
Exactly.
That's where I think that sentiment comes from, that idea comes from, that fear that there's not enough for everyone. That's a
Mm-hmm.
regular human fear. But then you take it to the extreme where the only way to succeed, the only way to survive is to take what someone else has. When
Right.
there's always another option, we can work together to grow the pie so that
There we
everyone
go.
has a shot.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Yeah. And growing the pie is much more difficult than just seeing what that brother got, and then I go and take what he got. I mean, and it is true because it growing the pie requires a lot of effort. It requires doing things that maybe are uncomfortable. You're getting out of your comfort zone, and just the act of writing. I think just the act of organizing your thoughts and putting it down in a way that other people consume it in an orderly fashion. That requires a lot of effort that a lot of people aren't willing to do. But I love the way you ended your essay, and it was that power line that I'm gonna read it again because it was so good. I can't do a Tony Holt impression. I'm not gonna try. But microaggressions turn into pop culture trivialities, weapons of mass psychological corruption. Ooh, I love that line. To craft your identity to serve your will, whatever it may be. To remember, to forget, and to create yourself anew. To be more than what they say you can, and never less than what you dream. You delivered it so well that day that it just feels so pedestrian when I just read it out of the book. But your words, man, powerful, powerful stuff, and I feel like we need that. I feel like everybody needs that in these times, not just black people, um, but everybody needs to hear that despite what's going on, despite the politics and the culture, and despite things just looking so dark and bleak, you can always choose. And if you choose to do something that's a little bit hard every day, you don't have to do the big thing. I think that's what people think. I think people think they need to do the really big thing. And the big things, at least in my experience, only come after you've done a lot of little things that most of the time people never see. That you don't get any credit for. You don't get any shine. Hell, you probably don't even get paid for it. The thing that people remember you for.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And I think that ties, or at least for me, that ties exactly what you said earlier about the writing being the hard thing.
Yeah.
right? Because it's such an easy way to start small, just a word, a line,
Yeah.
a minute, and at the end of two, three, four, five, you realize you've done more to clarify your thoughts, analyze a piece, understand something different than you have in the last, hour, day, month, year. I hadn't picked up the pen and paper to start writing something that wasn't for work before I wrote this essay. It
Wow.
had been years since I was in college, 20 some, since I had
Amazing.
written a paper, longer since I'd written any of my thoughts out for myself.
Right.
So when Ada brought this opportunity to me, introduced me to A.R. Farina, Tanya Todd, and the Comics Lit crew, I that became my big thing,
I love it.
and I realized this was my opportunity to do something I've always wanted to do, to become a published author.
Wow.
Um, but it wasn't until I started doing all of the small pieces, putting down the idea,
Right.
writing that outline,
Right.
filling in each section of that outline, right?
Yeah.
Cutting it down, editing it, giving it to Ada to read, sending it in for edit. Like it wasn't until I started doing all those small things
Yeah.
that could actually build up to completing a life goal, becoming a published author. And yeah, that
Amazing.
is hard. Every piece of it's hard, but
Yeah.
like the partnership Ada and I have the partnership you see here. Um, it's that partnership, that connection, that when we build it with our peers, with the other humans we live with the other humans we exist with,
Right.
that's how we can all grow and build, and that's how we make enough for everyone, right?
Exactly.
That's how we all thrive.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. I couldn't have put it better myself. Thank you guys so much for your time. With I wanted to ask you, speaking of writing, what are you guys working on? Are you working on anything new or Comics Lit Volume 2? What's going on with that? Let me know.
I'll let you start.
Well, at the moment, I am narrating an audiobook, or I'm narrating a young adult series, The
Okay.
Austin Chronicles, written by A.R. Farina. And I'm just about to start working on book three. Book two will be out, is out. Books one and two are out, and the audiobook for book two will be out next month.
Awesome.
Uh, are you gonna tell them about? Is it too soon to tell them about your other project?
I am publishing a book of essays soon also.
Book of essays. Okay. Are these personal
Thank you.
essays or what type
It's
of
a
essays?
book length single essay about my lineage in writing and sort of the how Buddhist education informed my writing and teaching practice.
Hmm.
That sounds interesting.
Amy Bobeda will be publishing that with the Wisdom Body Collective.
Coming out
Cool.
in Q2, Q3,
TBD.
TBD.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Coming
we're
out,
both hardworking women.
coming at you in 2025.
2025.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like that, Ada. Don't hold yourself down to a firm date just in case, you know. I've learned that
Yeah.
lesson the hard way many times. Like
Mhm.
2025. It's still March. I still
So
got
it's in the works.
9 months.
Yeah.
Nice. And how are you
The year
finding
just started.
the audiobook narration? Because that's something that I love doing as well. Is this your first time doing it?
It is. This is
Mm.
my first project, my first series. Other than podcasting, my acting career had been in person on stage mostly.
Cool.
And I really love the freedom that audiobook narrating offers in that I can do it from home
Mm-hmm.
when I have the time and energy to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By the same token, unlike a play or unlike a movie, it's just me in my room.
Yeah.
And there's something a little bit more challenging about generating all of that energy
Mm-hmm.
myself as a more extroverted person versus kind of playing off the ensemble.
Yeah.
So challenging but fun. And
Awesome.
I'm learning a lot.
Cool. What's your style? Do you do a mix of voice acting, or is it just more like a read? How do you do it? What do you prefer?
It's a mix. There's a For this particular series, there's a narrator that runs through the entire series and will run through the next series, and that's just my voice. And then each character has a different voice of
Awesome.
their own. So it's very dialogue driven. So every time a character
Cool.
speaks, they do have their own voice. The last book was set in England, so it was fun to learn all of the North and South
Yeah.
English side.
Cool. All right. Well, good luck
Thanks
with.
for asking.
No problem. Yeah, I just did a sample of an audiobook just like 2 days ago. So I was like, man, okay, I get to ask about this. I love doing it. It's a lot of fun. But you're right about it being a solo effort. Like there's no audience to play off of, and that can be a little bit scary sometimes because you're like, am I doing this too much? Am I hamming it up? Where do I need to adjust my energy? It gets kind of difficult.
Yeah, especially coming from the stage and having that live performance, I imagine it was. I didn't think about how hard that transition would
It's
be.
tough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
No, but I'm sure it's going to turn out great. If not, it's already great. Uh, Tony, what's up with you?
Fun. It's a good challenge.
Me, I am. What is next for me? Well, I won't be in Comic Lit Volume 2, unfortunately. I
Number 3.
I took number 2 off, as I had some other work deadlines that I needed to hit. But I do plan to come back for Comics Lit Volume 3, since they've got a number of books planned, and I'm working on a few different ideas for my essay there. I'm also
Podcasting.
I have also been on a number of podcasts as well, and I am very excited to continue with that. The Comics Lit team has been making offers to me as well as helping Ada and I make the rounds and share the good work that everyone's been doing. And there are a few authors of ours that have a number of their own podcasts. So we've been lucky enough to join other members there. And as much as I love this medium, I plan to start getting into it myself and start doing some
Oh,
podcasting.
really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Website.
I do have a LinkTree site now where I'm collecting a little bit of information that
All right.
I'll make sure to pass to you, Keith, so you can
Sure.
your audience.
Yeah.
And I am with Tanya Todd as well as another gentleman. No, Spider Dan. Shout out to Spider Dan. We're thinking about starting a podcast ourselves later this year, and it'll be my first time as kind of a guest host on a podcast, or I should say, I shouldn't say guest host. It'll be the first time as a recurring host.
You are
on a
going
podcast.
to be a host. Nice.
We'll see. Fingers crossed for 2025.
Yes.
Fingers crossed for 2025. Keeping it flexible.
And what's your idea for your podcast?
Ooh, I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to share at this point, but it is in the theme of banned books. I will tell you that.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Now you're speaking my language. Banned books podcast.
Ada just spilled the beans. I'm not sure you heard it. Hopefully that wasn't on the mic.
I actually didn't.
Sorry, Spider Dan.
Okay, so I didn't hear it. I was just writing down banned. All I got is banned books. So I feel like that is enough of a teaser to make me want to look for it whenever it's out. So you know how to find me. Whenever the first episode's out, please send it my way. Because I love banned books. There's just something about the word that I'm like, I always think, why did it get banned? What's so bad about it? Like, I don't know. My mind just starts going, and it immediately makes you want to read it. Like, just come on. This book got banned for a reason.
Did you know The Invisible Man was a banned book?
Really?
It is a banned book.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I really want to read it even more.
Check out Tanya Todd and the Banned Books podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We actually
It's with the Femon Collective this year.
It's with the Femon Collective, and we actually go into The Invisible Man's book banning.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a chance to see me on a podcast again and talk about the Black Panther essay.
Awesome. Well, where else can our listeners or viewers find you both?
I'm at www.aamccartney.com, and all my stuff on the internet lives there, gathered in one semi-organized place. What about you, Tony Holt?
You've also got your Instagram account. Don't forget that one.
Oh yeah, I have an Instagram at the real Mazeda.
I am relatively anti-social media, but I've got a LinkTree account for you. And if I'm not mistaken, it is LinkTree/Tony Holt Jr.
Awesome. I'm taking these down, and these are going to be in the show notes or in the description of this video. Thank you two so much for giving your time and giving this extra hour where it should have been an hour earlier, but I'm glad that we were able to. I'm glad that we were still able to do it. As for me, I've been Keith Hayden. I'm the host of this podcast, The Digital Novelist. You can find me at keithhayden.net, where I am hard at work on my third novel. It is a military game fiction techno thriller about aliens, China versus the U.S. in Okinawa, Japanese, Chinese, English. You know the deal. I always like to mix it up. It's going to be pretty interesting, social commentary. We've got all this stuff going on with technology, but how does it affect the human soul, the human condition? That's what this novel is going to be about. I'm also working on a course. Techno thriller, yeah. So you can check it out on my website if you want more information. I'm also working on a course called Novel Craft Secrets. This is my entire process for writing novels. I love teaching. I love sharing what I know. You can go on my website and you can find that there as well as a bunch of other tools to help you write and publish great stories with the world. That's what I'm all about, original stories. Thanks so much for listening or watching this podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tony, Ada, thanks so much again.